A viewer recently left this comment and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it says, someone recently did this to me, talking about marriage, kids, etc., but was inconsistent. I left immediately because I've been there, done that. I have no time. Now, as I was reading through the comment, I realized that this wasn't an isolated story. There were dozens of people describing almost the exact same experience. Now, here's the question most people don't ask. How does someone feel like they are in a relationship that is constantly talking about the future but never actually enters it? Because this is not just one story, this is a pattern that shows up everywhere. And if you've ever been in something like this, you already know the confusion is not accidental, it is a trap. Because nobody lives when things are unclear. They live when clarity finally becomes impossible to ignore. At the beginning, nothing feels wrong, absolutely nothing. In fact, it feels better than normal because the conversations are deep, the future sounds planned, the emotions feel intentional, and you normally hear things like, I can see us together long term. I don't want to lose you. You're my future wife. And your brain does something very important here. It doesn't treat those as just options. It treats them as a direction, and so immediately something starts forming in your mind. A timeline that doesn't actually exist yet. A relationship that hasn't been built yet. A future that is only spoken into existence. And here is the first hidden truth. Words don't build relationships. They only describe imagination. And that's where the first shift happens. You stop reacting to reality and start reacting to possibility. And this is where most people get stuck. Because human beings naturally prefer certainty. And when reality is uncertain, the mind will start creating its own certainty. So instead of asking, what is happening right now? People start asking, what could this become? And the moment that shift happens, you are no longer in a relationship. You are in a prediction. And prediction feel powerful, yes, because they give hope structure. And here's the dangerous part. A strong future story can hide a weak present reality. So even when nothing is changing, you still feel like something is building. Because you've already been emotionally moved into tomorrow. And this is where most people don't realize. They are not attached to the person anymore. They are attached to the story they were told. Now, let's slow it down a little bit, shall we? Because not every case is manipulation, but every case creates the same outcome. There are 3 patterns I have realized, and they are very common. The first pattern that I've realized is emotion without readiness. Some people or some men feel deeply in the moment. They say things based on their emotions, what they are feeling at the moment, not based on their capacity. So they mean it when they say it, but cannot sustain it when life requires action. The second pattern I realized also is comfort in connection, avoidance of responsibility. Some people or some men enjoy the closeness, but they avoid the structure. So they stay in emotional conversations because real commitment will require consistency. And then finally, intention without discipline. And this is the most confusing one. These people genuinely want the future, but once something is not the same as building it. And over time, intentions that are not backed by the behavior becomes merely noise. But here is the part nobody likes to admit. None of these explanations really matter if nothing is changing. People often overanalyze words, but behavior is always simpler. Because behavior always answers just one question. where is this relationship actually going? Not what is being said, not what is being promised, but what is consistently happening. So when someone says, I want a future with you, but shows no consistency, no planning, no progression, no structure, then you are not seeing confusion, you are seeing information. The hardest part is most people don't want to believe information, especially when it contradicts their emotions. Now we get to the uncomfortable truth. Stay with me. People don't just stay because they don't see the issue. They stay because they hope the issue will resolve itself. So the mind starts negotiating. Maybe he needs more time. Maybe he's not just ready yet. Maybe I should just be patient. And that maybe becomes the emotional glue because it delays a decision. And anything that delays a decision keeps emotional attachment alive. But here's what slowly happens in the background. You begin to normalize inconsistency. And once inconsistency becomes normal, clarity becomes harder to accept. But at some point, reality stops negotiating. And there's always a moment. And that moment is not dramatic. It's not loud. Just quiet clarity, where the mind finally says, if this was real, I would not still be waiting for it to start. Because real things don't just stay stuck in explanation. They move, they evolve, they show direction without needing reminders. And in that moment, everything reorders itself. Not because the situation changed, but because perception finally caught up. The pain is not just about the loss, it's about realization. Because you don't just lose a person, you lose the version of the future you were building in your head. And that future often felt more real than reality itself. The breakup doesn't feel like an ending in itself. It feels like waking up. And that's why it hurts deeper than expected. Because what ends is not just the connection, but the illusion of direction. So when someone talks about marriage with you, but nothing really progresses, the issue here is not always deception. Sometimes it is a mismatch between words and capacity. But regardless of the reason, whatever the reason may be, we all know the outcome is always the same. Confusion replaces clarity. Hope replaces progress. Waiting replaces action. And here is the truth most people often learn too late. If it doesn't move forward, it's already moving away. This is why you cannot judge relationships by conversations alone. Because words can build comfort, but only behavior reveals direction. And when those two don't align, you're not supposed to choose hope. You are supposed to choose clarity. Now, if you've ever been in a situation like this where everything sounded right, but nothing actually changed, what was the moment you finally saw it clearly? I would love to know in the comment section below, because a lot of people are still stuck in that exact same space and don't even realize it yet.